So let's start. So hi guys, and welcome to our final and third part of this mini-series webinar by the great Laveena Ramchandani, which you already probably know. This is Matan from the PractiTest team, marketing team here. And if you haven't watched the first two parts of the webinar, it's highly recommended to do it before today's webinar. But either way, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. And so let's begin with a quick overview about PractiTest just before we jump into today's final webinar. So let me just, okay, now it's moving. Okay, so for those of you who doesn't know, PractiTest is an end-to-end test management platform, which is centralized all your QA work, processes, teams, and tools into one centralized hub. They will enable one single source of truth according to your entire organization. As you can see here, some of our customers are leading brands across all different industries, including finance, retail, software, and much more. For those of you who are participating today and are PractiTest customers, there is a live training session in October 11th. So you can join and ask whatever you want, our great customer success team. And in addition, we also have on November 13 and 14, our online test golf, which is the virtual conference, testing conference that we are hosting. And I think that's mainly it. Laveena, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, perfect. Welcome everyone to my last session. Obviously, we've learned quite a bit throughout, and I hope it's been useful for you. And today we will just now kind of wrap up with the best practices for BDD and test automation and see them separately. And then it's up to you if you want to bind them together or have them completely separate, or not even have them at your workplace, or just for fun if you like. So let's start with the test automation best practices. So of course, I know loads of companies are doing test automation, but sometimes we forget about the best practices. We just think that we've got it all and we miss important aspects of automation. So let's have a quick look at what this could be. And just getting you alert, I have a little baby sleeping in the next room. So if there's noise, I'm sorry about that in advance. So first of all, we need to establish a test automation plan. Whether you do it with SpecFlow, BDD, anyone, you have to have a plan in place. So plan for test automation as early as possible. Not all test cases can be automated because, of course, some of them have a lot of changes. So you don't want to automate those. You only want to automate things that you know for a fact won't change in a long time. So keep those in mind. Test cases that should be done manually are UX tests, exploratory tests, app accessibility tests, anti-automation features, OS native features, or flaky functionality tests, as they're costly with the highest chances of false results. And if you think about the testing pyramid, majority of these that I've mentioned come at the top of the peak, or the ice cream cone triangle, if you think from that perspective. Choose an approach. So first we've got a plan. Now we need to think about an approach. So we want to perform risk analysis on a project. Recommended parameters include descriptions of potential risks, affectability, probability, mitigations, and association costs. We want to include the right people. So always have your 3 amigos. Bringing on the key stakeholders will let you stay in touch with the business requirements of the application as well, so you don't derail into anything else. Furthermore, consider options between in-house and outsourcing your QA team. So if you feel that in-house there's a smaller team, maybe it's best to keep them sort of in loop rather than have them do the tests. You can outsource with a supplier, and maybe they can then hand that over to you. You can review test artifacts with development. As business priorities change over time, testers should ensure test planning aligns with designed functionality. And furthermore, test planning should be well documented and dynamic, such that if there's any changes in the future, it's not restricted, it's dynamic, and it can update any change. Of course, now we've got a plan, we've basically got an approach, we want to have a testing tool in place. So don't rush going with the best automation testing tool in the industry. You have to have a conversation with your team, and maybe a developer already knows a tool that they've worked in the past with, and you can just use that knowledge and continue. The tool can produce the most robust tests and are adaptive to most, if not all, languages, platforms, and OS. Besides open source tools like Selenium or Appium, most commercial automation testing tools offer free consultations with their sales engineers to support your tool research process with technical and business information. So you also need to make sure that whichever tool you use, there's enough support. And look for a robust test automation tool with no commitment, very suitable for testing teams in short-term projects, or still researching for the fit tool. Set up an environment. So this is very important and expensive as well. So you want to have the right things in place. So in my opinion, obviously I've put it in this slide, but I think the first thing we need to think about is speak to architects and have an environment set up. So we want to ensure consistency. The development and test environment should be identical to the stage environment, whereas the stage environment should be the same as production environment as well. So as possible, as likely as possible, like a mirror version. Consider data as part of your test case, like the location to sort data, should the data be masked, and what happens to the data after testing. And if you're doing a golden data set, or are you actually using client data? And you need to be careful with that then. Define a set of best practices before writing test cases to ensure they're resistant to automated system changes. So when you write tests with test data specifically, be careful, because if the test data changes in the future, your test will fail. So try and make your tests dynamic as well and not hard-coded. The design. So adopt BDD if possible. Using user stories and writing testing requirements and scripts. This framework effectively puts testers and stakeholders on the same page because it's layman terms. It should be more data-driven for your test reusability as well. So by using data-driven approach, you can generate test cases just by changing the data stored in external files. And before adding any test into a regression suite, make sure to run and verify it multiple times to ensure that specific tests quality as well. Executing tests. So parallelize the automation test cases that require no interdependencies to save time. For example, a test case result of a payment page should not wait or depend on a login case. For example, they should be in parallel. And use a pipeline orchestrator or a scheduling tool to execute test cases in parallel, and put the application through tests under stable service and network. Reusability, results, and analysis. So this is very important as well when you come to automating tests. So identify slow failing tests, add a timer to your test run to single out tests that continuously fail or take time or are flaky. This practice helps you identify the bottleneck and reconfigure these test activities, therefore maximizing your testing efficiency. Again, compare your test outcomes to validated reports and documentation from previous versions to expand coverage, and incorporate either in-tool or third-party smart test report functions for advanced tests report and better test maintenance, because this again serves as a matrix for your team. For example, if they want to see coverage and percentage coverage, percentage confidence you have, so this will work out really well. So all of this was around test automation and their best practices. Of course, every team, every company has their own way of doing things as well. So this is not rigid, but as much of this that you could use would actually help you to a very positive path in automation and the longevity and the stability of your tests. On to BDD then. So let's have a look at their best practices. So write declarative features, because if you're not going to declare things properly with an acceptance criteria on the scenario, it can get confusing even though it's in layman terms. So keep it simple. Avoid UI action steps. Try and keep it simple, as I said earlier. You want to make sure that you are trying to use a user journey here. You're trying to basically help your business analyst and other stakeholders understand what you're trying to test. And you want to get as much out of your test as well. You don't want to just do simple checks. You want a journey to be checked. Avoid any conjunctive steps. Examples like loads of ands in between, loads of wheres, loads of when and then, because it just confuses a lot. So keep it super simple. Use background steps wisely as well. You don't want to have repetitive tests and then repetitive step definitions. You want to have a test that can be reused various times, and the same thing for the code behind it. It can be reusable, and if it's not reusable, refactor them to make it reusable. Limit the number of scenarios per feature. So if you are trying to do a login scenario, for example, a login with password and username, try and keep it to maximum 1 or 2. You don't have to have 5, 6 test cases to test that the password works and the username works and the button works. You can try and have it in one test so that it's done sooner. Limit the number of steps per scenario as well. So again, you don't want a lot of steps. You want to keep it simple, the given, when, then, and maybe a few ands here and then, not a lot of ands. And as last time I showed a but, if there's anything you want to kind of negate there. Choose good titles. So it's not good to have conflicting or long titles or really confusing titles, because this is again layman terms and it can get confusing for loads of people and your stakeholders. So try and keep your titles easy to understand, simple to read, and easily to kind of digest what the user journey is going to look like. So things like, as a test analyst, I want to make sure that the login system works. So basically that is telling me that you're going to test the username, the password, and the button that you have to press to log in. Rather than, as a test analyst, I want to test the password. But the password of what? The login system, right? So you're missing a critical functionality there. So choose your titles wisely. So steps order is very important. Make sure it's given, when, then, not given, then, when, because that's going to mess up. So not any other way. And follow the syntax correctly, because it can cause a crash, and it can also cause a lot of issues which are unwanted. And especially in the time when everyone is actually dependent on automation tests and the results, it's good to have things very clear and clean. Or what I call beautiful automation tests. Test data as well, like as I explained earlier with one of the automation best practices, don't hardcode your test data. So as you can see over here, Google search, they're going to basically do a simple Google search, given a web browser is not on the Google page. When the search phrase panda is entered, then the result for panda are shown, and the following related results are shown. So related means Panda Express, Giant Panda, Panda videos. But you can actually condense that, and you can now, at this point, you're using best practices for automation and BDD right now. So it's a 2-in-1 happening here. So all you need to do is scenario, search, results, linking. Given Google search results for Panda are shown, when the user clicks on the first result link, then the page for the chosen result link is displayed, rather than hard coding these things. Because as I say, in the future, I might want to choose baby panda. It's not on the list, my test will fail. So you don't want to go through that. Is BDD and test automation for my team? So this was a really good question that I got asked last time, whether it's a big team or a small team. It all depends on what the skill set is within your team, or you have enough budget for outsourcing. But if you have a big team, try and use the skill set within your team, try and introduce the BDD style in your team and see if you get a buy-in. If it's not BDD, then maybe it's something else, but at least from your side, you should give it a go and see if the developers have also got some knowledge in this area to be supportive in creation of this framework and repository. If you have a small team, there are several options. You can have obviously you can start automating. There's no problem with that, but maybe it might be more of a shared task between developers, testers, maybe even architects. So maybe it's something that quite a few people are doing it just so that this can start. And then maybe you can outsource it, or it's up to obviously the team and the budget at the end of the day. But it is possible in both sides of teams. It's being done. So I just wanted to kind of revisit this question. I am done now. I hope you found the best practices interesting as well. And if you already have them in place, then congratulations. But if you are thinking of having them in place, then I hope I've helped you today. But now I'm open to questions, and once again, on time.
Wow, that was a great session. We do have one question, and it's regarding the limitation for steps per test. So someone asked, how many steps are exactly too much for a BDD test?
So something like, given I want to search the word star on Google, given I want to search the word star on a web browser, and I want to search, I don't know, moon and Mars, when I type this on the Google search, then I should see results, and I should see separate results for each three, for example. And you keep adding loads of ands. What you can do here is either have a simple test and say, I want to basically search star, moon, and Mars, and keep it like that. But again, I'm specifically saying these words, so I'm actually hard coding it, so I shouldn't do that. So we just want to cut it down and keep it simple to planets, right? Keep something simple like that. But what I was trying to say here was chunky test cases with loads of ands, with double whens, double thens. That is not good practice, because you're going off in a tangent. So if you can actually break down that tests into 2 tests, maybe, that is a good practice, rather than have one chunky test. Just like the example we saw, it was all hard coded. There were quite a few ands in there, and it didn't seem like a very beautiful test to me. The one next to it completed exactly the same things, but in a much more condensed format, and it was using best practices, and there was no hard coding there either. So it's a test that will live longer. It's a test that won't be flaky at all as well. So that's what I mean by having the condensed, beautiful format.
Cool. I think we got this covered. And I can see one more question here. Can you use BDD tests with teams that include non-testers, like analysts or product owners that participate in the testing efforts?
Yes, so why not? That's why the 3 amigos are here for. And what you can do is you can actually write your scenarios on your feature ticket on Jira or Azure, whichever project management tool you're using, or test management. You can actually pre-write it with your team in planning sessions, for example, or a 3 amigos session. That's why it's best always to kind of collaborate as much as possible with your team, especially with developers and project managers or business analysts, because it's from them that it's from all 3 of us that we won't run off into different tangents. We will all have the same understanding. We will stick to the feature, and we won't have like an elephant in the room situation that the developer thought he was doing, or he or she was doing this. I thought as a tester I'm doing something else, and then the business analyst actually delivered a feature that was completely different. So we want to kind of stay in the same boat, and we want to make sure that we can write these things with business analysts as well as developers, and get a confirmation from them that yes, this is the right thing that we want. You can do that. And I would actually encourage everyone to be as collaborative as possible.
Amazing. Oh, I think this is the end of the question. Let me see if there is another one. Someone wrote, I believe you explained that we should aim for maximum reusability in the steps, but how can we give the freedom during the Three Amigos for people to design the scenarios without worrying about reusability and let them naturally use the words they want, while at the same time avoiding the workload of adapting the steps to fit what is reusable?
Okay, so the way we would do this, in my opinion, I would actually screen share. We would sit there and we would see that, okay, is there anything similar to this feature that we already have in place? Someone might have, because we are all day doing this, we may have the capacity to be like, oh, yes, there is something similar, or no, this is completely brand new feature. So let's think about this. And of course, at the start, we're going to have chunky scenarios, but then this is where teamwork comes in place. If I'm going to write loads of ands, maybe the developer might chip in and be like, but Laveena, you can actually cut this down and write it in the then rather than another and. So that's where practice makes perfect kind of thing. So the more you practice, the more you showcase things, the more you collaborate with each other, and you're doing it on a screen in a meeting room, it helps visualize what we already have and what can we do on top of it. Can we reuse that or not? Or if it's at least 50-50, right? It's got 50% of something we already have, but 50% of it is new. We can still reuse the code of the one that we have and then make new code and a couple of new statements of our BDD for the new feature. But try and see if you can reuse as much as possible, because it just saves money, time, and efficient. It makes it all efficient, actually. So that's what I would suggest. And hopefully I answered your question. But sometimes there are going to be cases where there's no reusability and there's no way of doing anything else but write a new feature. So it's acceptable. Don't worry about that. But where you can, try and reuse. Where you can't, there's no hard and fast rule that you shouldn't write a new test case. I have seen test repositories with over 1,000 tests. That's where my mind blew. And I was like, I need to go and clean everything, because it looks like there's a lot of repetition and we can couple tests together. And actually 300 tests were just removed straight away because there was a lot of repetition. So if you start on a clean slate, it's really good to know these best practices because you won't make these mistakes. But if you're 1,000, 2,000 tests in, it's very difficult to go one by one, cleaning them up. So yeah. I hope I answered your question.
Let me just see that there is any other questions. I think we got it covered. Laveena, I want to thank you very much for this entire mini series. It was amazing. It was educational. Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining. Have a great day, evening, night, depending whenever you are in the world. See you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.